my brain. It's nothing supernatural. It's not from a horror film or anything like that. Like, oh my gosh, it's emanating this red crimson glow. How you doing, guys? So, okay, this has been a fun. Okay, so we're talking Coolest Rob. We got Stephen Harper, Coolest Rob. Coolest Rob is your first time on Christian Fandom Geek on The Lord Be With You. Stephen Harper, you've been on quite a few times, and you're known as very over-opinionated and brash, but you've aged really well. So that kind of
I appreciate that.
That balances it out.
I don't know your age to judge, sorry.
So okay, let's go to Coolest Rob first, because Coolest Rob really helped me out the other day. So this stream is sponsored by Coolest Rob, who sorted me out a Disney Plus login when I was in need.
Oh wow!
To finish, because I was like, what was happening was everyone on Twitter was spoiler alerting Boba Fett, and I was like, I know this person's come back, that person's come back, and I was like, I haven't got my Disney Plus up and running. So then Coolest Rob was like, dude, have you been watching Boba Fett? And I was like, no, because I haven't got Disney Plus at the moment. And oh, hi, Keely. Awesome. How you doing? So we've got this is a live stream, so guys, so like the fans of the show will be like will be chipping in and whatnot. So that'll be fun. So yes, of Coolest Rob sorted me out. I've caught up with Boba Fett now. Yay!
That's my dog.
There we go.
I'll be honest, but when you call yourself a Star Wars fan, you haven't watched the key Star Wars thing everyone's on about. It's a bit disappointing for you. So I thought, I'll do my bit for a good cause.
Dude, I was really upset. I was like, I found out that episode 5 was about Mando. I was like, Mando's back. I said, okay. So I was like, okay, the spoiler alerted that for me. But okay, fair enough. And then Keely, we're going to talk about Star Wars. We're going to talk about the Book of Boba Fett. We're also going to talk about Matrix Resurrections and these guys. If you're wondering who these guys are, Stephen Harper's one of the guys on the show. So he's on quite a few episodes of Christian Fandom Geek. And Coolest Rob has his own. He's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who has his own YouTube channel, which you can plug in a bit, and also is kind of very much involved in fandom as well, aren't you? On Fandom Collective. So this is the boys. The boys are chilling out, talking about geek stuff, nerd stuff, and all that good stuff. Okay, so Stephen Harper, have you seen the Book of Boba Fett at all yet?
Of course not.
Okay, that's fine. So you're going to not
as well
be too
prepared.
Okay, okay. Coolest Rob, you've seen it all. I've seen it. That's fine. But the first thing I wanted to talk about before we even get to Star Wars, I want to talk about Matrix. So have both of you seen Matrix, the new Matrix film?
I haven't yet.
You haven't. So you're going to get spoiler alerted, Coolest Rob, on that one.
Okay.
Stephen Harper, have you seen it?
No. I've gone off of. It's an intentional no from me. I've got HBO Max here, so I should be able to watch it, but I can't put myself to watch it. And then people's reviews of the show have confirmed why I didn't want to watch it.
Okay, so we won't talk much about the Matrix in that much depth, but I will happily spoiler alert it for both of you. It was a terrible film.
Yeah. That's terrible. What I thought.
It's really bad. Like I know some people were saying it could be a bad film, but it was just like it was way worse than I thought. I was like, oh man, this film's terrible. Okay, so the main theme of it for me is it went very into wokeness, and we kind of know what we're going when we're talking about the wokeness. It went really woke. It went away from Neo really, and it's like Neo's kind of not the main guy really, even though for most of the film you think he's the main guy, and then you realize he's kind of not, and it's just like really. But I shouldn't have been surprised. I think I had a low expectation anyway, and then they just confirmed it.
Was it as much of a because a lot of people that I read with reviews, they said that it was essentially like a nostalgic reboot of the original, and so a lot of it felt like it was repeated. so there was nothing new. It just felt very unoriginal.
Okay, do you know when films kind of start to self-reference themselves in the film?
Yeah.
You have to be really clever. If you're gonna make a film that references itself, you have to be really clever about how you do it. So let me give an example. I don't know if this really referenced itself, but okay, the only film I could think of really that kind of did it in a kind of did it was that film about John Malkovich film where it starts talking about John Malkovich and John Malkovich is in the film.
Yeah.
And that film did it really, really well because it's kind of it wasn't taking itself too seriously. So you have to do it in a very clever sort of nuanced sort of way. They just did it in a really bizarre. It was really bizarre. Like it was like the Matrix films were referenced in the films as video games, and it was really weird. And then at one point, they referenced Warner Brothers, and I was like, "What? You
No, they
referenced the
didn't.
studio that makes the film?" It's just like.
Has anyone did anyone play the Matrix game they brought out sort of to go with the film?
I was going to play it last night.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
'cause
Actually, that acting
I almost
graphics
played it.
quite good.
There's not a lot to it, but I think it's more just sort of showing, I suppose, how the effects are done. Like you can sit there triggering it to go from like day to night slowly, and like with different sun changing. I suppose if anything, it's sort of promoting, how the graphics are so well done and how all the effects and stuff can be done, which it's cool in that respect. But it's one of those things where after about 15 minutes, you're sort of like, okay, well, what really is there to do now? Apart from now, I've sort of played around with that. But I felt like, I'll be honest, I know it's going to probably be a low blow to you there, Bear, but it's a case I felt like Star Wars did the same as what you're saying in The Matrix with Episode 7. I felt where they've potentially gone back to the whole slightly Death Star styled thing with the planet and this and that. I felt like, and the whole family thing, I felt like, couldn't we have gone for a new angle? And it sounds like it's sort of with regards to sort of going over this familiar sort of lines. And I felt it sounded like that's with Matrix. That's why I haven't watched it. I felt like, is it like a bit like the first one where, you're Neo, this, that, and the other, you're the Oracle and all the rest of it, or the prodigal son or whatever. And I just felt like, is it going to be going over old ground? And that's why I was a bit like, I'll wait for it to sort of, come out and go a bit cheaper and then see what I think of it.
Yeah, you're not missing much. I mean, okay, linking that to what you said about with Star Wars, like obviously for me, I think like, the episode 7, so you're talking about the Force Awakens. The Force Awakens, I actually thought was kind of a safe film. J.J. Abrams, obviously, it was kind of a copy of A New Hope, a sort of new iteration of A New Hope, really. So he played it safe, which is okay. And I thought it was okay. It was a decent film, like probably 6.5 out of 10 film for me. But then where it went wrong for me was the next film, The Last Jedi, which was the one where Rian Johnson was the director, and it was the old idea of subverting expectations. So basically, you got a Luke Skywalker that was underpowered, and he was an old, angry hermit sort of dude, kind of thinking about all the mistakes that he's made with Kylo Ren. And then he pretty much refuses to train Rey. And then inexplicably, you get the main villain, Snoke, killed halfway through the film with no explanation as to who he was. So it was just like, what's going on here? like it's just like, this is bizarre. And so that's where they went for me for Star Wars. That's where they went wrong. And what happened after that is the fans. That's what kind of fueled the fandom war in Star Wars, where there was a backlash. So the next film that came out was the Han Solo film, and basically the fans were like, "No, we're not going to go and watch that film because you just give us The Last Jedi, which was an absolute rubbish, and so we're boycotting that film. Screw you, Disney Lucasfilm." And basically that was that, and that's been the fandom war ever since. Now, I think it's different for Matrix because I think Matrix is finished anyway now. Really, I think with Matrix, like the first Matrix film was the best one, which was one of the most iconic science fiction films of all time. And then the rest of them have just gone downhill. Reloaded was okay, and then the third film wasn't very good, and then this one's even worse. So the Resurrections one is the worst film out of all of them.
So, right, this is where my controversial bit comes in, because I think that the movies have followed the mental breakdown of the directors.
Mental breakdown.
Because, like, obviously, the two directors have both transitioned now.
They have transitioned.
I don't think that one of them even had anything to do with the last one.
No, that's right.
I can't remember which one because they've changed identities, and I struggled to know the difference
I
between them before they
know the one
transitioned.
that is Lana Wachowski, and I can't remember if that was Larry or Andy. I don't know which one it was, but Lana's the one that made it. The other one, the other sister now, I don't think was involved.
But when they wrote the first one, they were in a completely different mental state and space.
Yeah.
So while they had like the fantasy elements and all that stuff, they weren't going through any personal things. I don't know how to say that like politically, but ultimately they weren't messed up in their head.
Yeah.
With this recent one, I know for a fact that it was Warner Brothers who drove the production of the movie. They were the ones who pressured them to make a new movie because obviously they want to make money, and this was a really good opportunity for them. Like, why can't we continue the series? And the Wachowski sisters now, they haven't made anything good outside of The Matrix. So for them, it was like, we're going to have to make The Matrix because we're no good at making any other stories or films. I think they're kind of one-hit wonders to me. They made a really good movie. They had a great storyline. It was a concept, I think, that was quite common. So it wasn't, to me, an original story. It was something that they literally just filled out from what everybody has always talked about. What if the world is just like a false reality and we're being controlled by people? Like, this is not a new concept in whether it's philosophy or just general conspiracy talk. So I think for me, they were just smart enough to take the concept and actually fill out a story that was coherent and made sense within its own universe. And then they've run out of ideas, and it was obvious from the first three that they were running out of ideas because the story was jumping ridiculously from one plot point to another. And while you could see the thread of where they wanted to go, how they got there was a little bit weird. And they used the Matrix as the vehicle to justify the weirdness of how they were jumping through the story. And it didn't work. And obviously fans didn't like that. But I think people were they loved the first one. They were loyal to the brand, as I'm assuming Star Wars fans are as well. So they were willing to follow on the journey.
Yeah.
But when I got to this new one, I was like, this is a complete waste of time. Like, it's been too long between all the stories. They both haven't developed it. It's Warner Brothers who pressured them. And I believe the references to Warner Brothers were supposedly the writer was having a jab at Warner Brothers because they didn't want to write it. They literally didn't want to make the movie. And so you end up with this like half-hearted effort that's more to do with Warner Brothers. Same with the Batman. It's the same with the whole DC universe at the moment. Like,
but
we're getting some ridiculously bad efforts. I mean, I'm going to probably hold back my comments on the new Batman movie because that actually looks all right.
Yeah.
But the Batman, Superman, Justice League stuff is absolute garbage, as you know about my feelings on a certain Zack Snyder.
Leave Zack Snyder alone. You're a big bully. You are. You're bullying that man.
What an idiot that guy is. Just ruined. He's like doing a good job of ruining DC's universe, which is better than Marvel. It's ridiculous.
I'll be honest, Marvel definitely to me is way better than DC, partly because of the characters. With Marvel, you like the characters. Of DC, there's not much to them. Like, say, like Ben Affleck when he was his Batman, for instance, there's nothing that makes you think, oh, I love it, like him as a character and like that, because there's not much to him. And that's the problem with DC. It's not very often they have that sort of look at Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man and lots of different characters in Marvel, or like Thor, you like them for partly the characters they've created. With DC, they seem to struggle to do that. It's all very much sort of, yes, that's their abilities, that's their powers, but there's not much you physically like about them as a person, if you get me.
Oh, okay. How their character development, how they're building them up.
There's just you don't ever sit there for your sort of rooting for them because you like them, because they're like funny or anything like that. It's not really much to them apart from the fact they're supposed to be like these strong heroes or whatever. But you don't really get much personality from them. If you get me, like say if Wonder Woman, I haven't seen the last one, but the first one you never get sort of her ever sort of like ever
Don't
do
watch
something.
don't watch the new one. I'll save you the trouble right there.
I heard it was
big shout out to Star Wars Infinite and God's Geeks on the stream. Big shout out, guys. Thanks for being popping onto the stream. Star Wars Infinite's a cool dude. Actually, I'm gonna get him on probably early spring. You'll be on. We'll get something together with you guys as well. Fantastic. Okay, I like the first Wonder Woman film. Actually, I felt it had a lot of heart to it. The third scene was kind of, when you get to the end, like the sort of the beginning, middle, and the end. That kind of the end scene was a little bit over the top, but actually, it had a strong enough beginning and middle to say it was a good film. And the No Man's Land scene, even though it looked like a kind of sort of L'Oreal commercial or something like that, it was actually really, really good. Like I felt the emotion in it was really good. Like you felt she was genuinely being told, you can't go across this field. No man goes across this field. You can't go across this field. And she's like, well, I am, you know what I mean? And like flicks her hair and it's like, oh, you go, girl. And I was like, fair play, girl. You know what? Don't let the brothers tell you that you can't do something. You go for it. And she did all right, so fair play.
But it's just like another thing that annoys me with DC is if you watch the last few DC films they've had, is everything is blown up. If you see a city fighting around a city, the whole city, all of the blocks of houses are destroyed, and everything is absolutely obliterated to the point where you'd hate living anywhere near a superhero because the whole city gets destroyed. Whereas Marvel, yes, some damage is done. But if you look at, say, like End Games, Infinity Wars, and the rest of it, damage is done, or when they're fighting, but you don't get literally building is completely devastated by being chopped in half and fall out. So it's just ridiculous.
I
think like just demolition.
Basically,
DC have a problem
about your neighborhood.
I mean, house prices aside, I think DC have an issue with the characters are too dark for the most part. You look at someone like Batman, it's a really dark story in terms of the psychology of where he comes from and how his whole character's formed out of his own fear. And that's, to me, it connects with people, but on a different level to someone like Iron Man. Marvel is entertainment for me. DC is more of an actual exploration of the psyche and therefore more niche. But what Warner Brothers are trying to do is make DC Marvel, and it's never going to work because, like you said, without the charisma of someone like Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man, you can't have a Downey Jr. playing Batman. It's not going to work because you're then not going to take Batman as seriously as he should be taken. Someone like Superman is like, he's just a clean-cut superhero. And if you compare him to Captain America, they're actually the same. Like Captain America to me is pretty bland. I don't think there's much to his character.
Yeah, it's the Boy Scout archetype, isn't it?
Yeah. What makes him entertaining is the arguments he has with Iron Man and with the rest of the group. DC doesn't have that. They don't have the banter because they're all too serious. There's no one who's sort of half serious and just taking everything kind of as a joke, even though you can tell that Downey Jr. knows that the universe is at stake in the story, but like he actually lightens the mood through all of that.
He does.
Whereas with Batman, it's always miserable and like the end of the world. They all actually take it literally, so it's hard to stay engaged, in my opinion. I don't think it's as entertaining.
Is that an issue with the writing? Is that what is the issue with that? Then is that the writing? Is that the source material?
Everything.
Is it the talent? Like what is that? Is it the director not directing it properly? Like what's the issue with that?
I mean, obviously, look, this is my opinion. I think the directing sucks, as you know, when it comes to a certain Snyder. I think that the actors were really badly chosen. Affleck is like a vanilla actor. He is as bland as it's going to be. I would rather them explore like, I'd rather them have a black Batman. If they're going to do anything different, just do it different. Do not stick with someone like Affleck who just doesn't have charisma. And I'll give you an example. This is why the Joker is always more entertaining and more successful as a character, because he's as evil as he is and as deeply, darkly psychotic that character is. He still has fun, and you need charisma in the role to pull it off. And so therefore the Joker as a character is really entertaining as a villain just to watch. And I was reading yesterday that they're looking at doing I think the script for the Joker 2 has been approved now, which will be the first time that Joaquin Phoenix has ever done a sequel. He's never done a sequel before, because he's a bit like a method actor. He loves the challenge of doing new roles. Now, the evolution of the Joker's story from the first one, if you've seen it, is totally dark. It's a really morbid, very adult movie. I wouldn't let kids watch the Joker, especially at the end when you see him shoot De Niro in the face live on air on this news show, so on a talk show. That's, to me, the true life of what DC should be. And I think that they're trying too hard to essentially take market share from Marvel. But they just need to leave it. Let Marvel be Marvel. Let Marvel do all the lights, color, and action over there. But I think what DC should be doing is actually sticking to their success, which is to focus on that dark and niche market and side of the psyche, because it's a very unique story. Like, why they haven't done the Batman Who Laughs is beyond me. If you don't know that story, it is the best storyline in all of DC Comics, revolving around Batman and Superman. So for me, it's like, that's the story I would be focusing on, because it's true to DC Comics. The fans are going to love it because it's a very different story to tell.
Yeah, so what is that story? I haven't come across that one.
Well, I don't want to give too much away here.
Oh yeah,
but essentially it's Batman's transformation from Batman to the Joker.
Ooh, wow.
So there's a lot. I mean, I'm skipping over a lot of detail here, but Batman becomes the Joker. He's like, essentially, it's almost like a virus that the Joker's given him, and it changes Batman. And a lot of people die in it. It's a very, very dark storyline, but it's different to anything else. There's no other major comic book. They tried it with Superman when he goes evil in the originals, and it just doesn't work because it's not dark. Like, he became moody. It's like
so you can't. I've spoke with like so, different guys about this, and I've spoken about this on the show as well. And it's like you can't really turn Superman like evil. Really, the only way you can do it is if you have Bizarro Superman kind of thing, which they've done before. So the Bizarro is just Superman's doppelganger. It's a copy of Superman, and he's evil, but it's not Superman himself. But it doesn't. Captain America's the same. Captain America, Superman, they are characters that should always be the good.
Yeah.
They're the standard. They are essentially the epitome of hope.
Yeah.
And so they should not be dark. They shouldn't be ambivalent. They shouldn't be thinking, are they good or they're evil? They should always be the good. They're the good guy. And
Are there any characters in Marvel that are like that? Because Batman walks on like a knife's edge between good and evil.
it's
And
a
that's
strong
the
moral
whole
code,
point of the
isn't it,
Joker is
Batman?
and the whole point of the Joker is that they essentially sit on each side of that knife edge. Joker, there's something about him. He's trying to pull Batman in, and he believes that he can corrupt Batman. That's the whole premise of their sort of rivalry, right? I don't know. Is there anyone in Marvel? Because I don't know Marvel comics as much outside of everyone that we've already seen. So I don't know if there are any characters that are as dark as someone like Batman. And it's within this area that I think DC get it wrong, whether it's the writing, the direction, the casting, everything seems to be wrong. And this is why I love Christopher Nolan's version, because Batman Begins, a lot of people didn't like that, especially compared to the second and the third movie, because it went away from the sort of traditional Penguin, Joker, Mr. Freeze. Like, it went away from the cheesiness that even Tim Burton pulled in at times. But to me, that dark line is where DC works its best. The
Yeah,
new
I
Batman
think
looks like
I
it's
think
going to go
Nolan,
towards that again.
yeah,
And I think the
Nolan
new
did
Batman
well.
will be a success because of it. But then they're having two separate universes at the same time with two different Batman. And it's like, nobody's going to watch the Justice League because it's crap. Like, you've written a really bad story. The actors are terrible. Everybody has already said that they're annoyed that this universe exists. And yet they're persisting with it instead of just rebooting. Like, I know we're in a situation where Henry Cavill is actually a good Superman. Like, they've actually got a good Superman actor.
He is.
And he's kind of, the poor guy's lost with a cast of idiots. And it's like, he can't fully explore who he is because they're not giving him just a normal Superman movie. Like, just let him make Superman movies, do those really well.
I think they're switching the whole thing. So I think, from what I've heard, because it's been spoken about that the Supergirl is going to replace Superman, and that because there's issues with Warner Brothers with Henry Cavill. For some reason, they don't like him. So they want him. They're trying to basically kind of get rid of him, essentially.
Have you seen Peacemaker by any chance?
No, is that the one with John Cena in?
Yeah, that's good.
Is it good?
I was actually entertained, but I think that group is where I think they finally found their Marvel. Like, that's where you do the Marvel stuff for DC. You can have fun with those guys because those characters are literally essentially they're a piss take of Marvel. So that's okay. It works in that world. Sylvester Stallone as a shark is ridiculous, but it's funny. All of those characters were ridiculous. And
hang on, just 1 second. So Star Wars influence put, I've always been of the opinion that they should have thrown the kitchen sink at Bale and Nolan and made that work instead of the crossover, DC crossover stuff. Yeah, Star Wars Infinite, I'd probably kind of what like Steve Harper was saying, really. It's like they could have went that direction more, but I think they were essentially they were copying Marvel, like we've said. And I kind of get it because Marvel's doing so well and doing so good at what they do, but it just doesn't work. DC needs to be themselves because they're not Marvel.
Yeah. But then you got to remember, Nolan wanted to do Superman himself, and a certain Zack Snyder got in the way. And so Nolan ended up producing it for Superman. The Man of Steel, Nolan produced it. Yeah. So all of the good elements in it were from Nolan. And Snyder was just like, I'm putting my foot down. He'd convinced Warner Brothers at that point he was the guy to drive the universe. And then disaster ensued. So Nolan should have been given the helm for Superman. But I also believe he was making Inception at the time. He was making another one of his movies. And so he kind of let Superman go because he didn't want to have a fight with an idiot.
Yeah.
But do you feel sometimes they struggle with what audience to aim DC at? Because you think of it, years ago, you got then the Batman films, which went like to the other side of the scale, like Batman and Robin, the sort of cheesy ones, but then kids more sort of like them because they're for the younger age. Yeah. Then they've gone to the darker ones, which they're sort of, it's more suited to DC, but then they're ruling out the sort of the kids audience that Marvel has. It's like they're trying to sometimes work out who do we aim this at, and to sort of make the film to sort of maximize what we're getting back from it without literally wrecking the characters. And I think, let's be honest, if you look at Batman over the years, there's been such a range of Batmans, from how cheesy Batman and Robin was with Mr. Freeze and everything else to, as you said, Christian Bale is literally complete different sides of a coin. And I think that sometimes with Marvel, they've just sort of created characters, and because they've just sort of, luckily, I suppose, worked in many ways. If you look at all the different characters they've had, like Ant-Man and all sorts, I'd say Gamora is the only one I can think of when you're referencing those on the sort of the edge of not sure which side to choose.
Yeah.
Where like
you can look at an obvious one would be like Loki.
Well, yeah, I suppose, sort of bit of, but
and the Loki story is great. The series on Loki is really good. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's again really fun.
I enjoyed Loki.
But they keep a lot of the Marvel in it, which is great for them because they still have the entertainment factor. It's not, with him, it's not, you're not going to the deepest levels of darkness. They always keep it on a very light-hearted level. I mean, there's a reason they chose what's his face, Owen Wilson, to be in that series, because he's
Morbius.
essentially a comic actor. Like, that's where his roots are, and
He
it
was good
works.
in it, actually.
It
I really
works
liked
really
him.
well.
Yeah, I liked him in it. Have you seen Loki?
Yeah, I've seen Loki. Yeah, I said it's it was all right until that, but I suppose sometimes I do feel with Marvel right now they're very much obsessed with the multiverse and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the multiverse stuff.
Yeah, it's good, but I feel like it doesn't need to be in every story they tell now, because they've gone from one extreme where every film had nothing to do with the multiverse to now everything they make involves the multiverse. I just feel like they've gone from one extreme to the other, where like it seems like they can't seem to do a film which doesn't involve the multiverse at this moment, or a series.
It's mad, really.
And DC are doing it as well. So they're all going for multiverse now, because obviously you can bring in, with the multiverse, it gives you a lot of storytelling kind of range. So you can bring characters back. Characters that are killed in one universe can be brought back from another universe. Characters that are good in one universe can be evil in another universe. So you can play with the tropes and the arcs really, really well. So from a storytelling point of view, you've got a lot of range. So that's, I think, why they like multiverse stories so much.
The issue I have with that is the clarity and the transparency of it all. Because fans of it now, they want to watch as many movies as they can. And DC's a perfect example of this. They're trying to merge and justify having two separate Batman by saying that they're in two different timelines and universe. Great, fine. But when you're making the movies side by side, chronologically, I'm getting two Batman movies very close to each other. I'm still thinking about, I've still got the other Batman that I've just watched in my head. So I've already got my perceptions of that Batman before I'm watching this newer dark one. So already I'm influenced in a negative way when I should be viewing this Batman completely separately. And I think in comic books, it's a lot easier to divide and to be clear about the separation of that universe and how they're different. I think in movies, you've got to have an actual time separation before you start releasing and changing things up. They don't reference each other because they're in different universes, which is weird. Nothing really crosses over. And I think that's why Marvel keep referencing the multiverse, because they're trying to remind you that there are different things going on, even though it's all part of like this parallel multiverses that work parallel to each other. And I think that's why they keep trying to reference it. I'm not saying it's a good thing, and because I agree with you, it gets annoying when you just keep hearing them talk about other stuff. It's the same as this idea that in movies now, they seem to be becoming, instead of having adverts, they're putting the adverts in the movies, and it's weird. Like, I'm fed up of seeing branded cars every 5 minutes in movies, and like just weird. It's like these small meme style adverts that are taking place in the middle of a movie where they'll hold a product, and it's just so contrived. And it's stuff like that.
Like the Truman Show.
Yeah, and the studios themselves are beginning to do it. And like you said, Warner Brothers are being mentioned more in their movies. And it's like they're just massaging their own egos. And that, to me, is the problem behind it all. It's a bit
cringe as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the problem. DC have got an ego. They're on an ego trip. Warner Brothers want to do it their way. And between the two of them, I just don't think they're merging properly on what they're doing. Because if you look at the video game side of DC and Warner Brothers in particular, the video game side is phenomenal. The writing, the scripting of characters, like all the Batman movies all the Batman games are successful because they always stay true to their lane. The Lord of the Rings game, unbelievable games. Because what they're doing is staying true to the actual original stories. They're not going so far into the distance. They're not doing political correctness stuff as well, which is another distraction from what the story is actually about.
That's a hot thing at the moment, isn't it? The political correctness stuff. So obviously, like there's the stuff with Gina Carano, and I think like Gina's basically, I don't know if Cool you might not have come across this, but Gina's basically, obviously, she was on The Mandalorian. She was a popular character as Cara Dune. Obviously, she's made some comments about to do with politics, and she referencing World War II and the Jewish people. That got her fired from Disney Lucasfilm. Kathleen Kennedy said that's enough. Enough's enough. And then, like, basically, Whoopi Goldberg's made some comments, I think the other week, about World War II and what went on about. I think Whoopi said something about, like, oh, you know, it happened. The reason why it happened wasn't because it was to do with their race. And basically, everyone's like, oh, hang on.
She said it was man against humanity rather than anything to do with race. It was just it was to do with mankind just wanting to eliminate itself, and race had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And obviously, so what's happened there? Gina's then saw well, Whoopi's been, I think, like, been given suspension for 2 weeks or something like that. And so basically, Gina's like saying, hang on, this is double standards. Like, you fired me, but you're only giving Whoopi Goldberg a 2-week suspension. What's going on there? Why is it not in the same sort of? Why isn't it the same treatment? Why isn't it the same thing? If what's good for one should be good for the other. So, what do you think on that, Stephen Harper? Why is Whoopi only getting? Because the thing is, the company that Whoopi Goldberg works for is Disney. The talk show that she's on is a Disney company. So it's not like it's a different organization where you can say, okay, this organization is dealing with it. Their policy is different to Disney. They're both Disney. So why is Whoopi getting 2 weeks suspension, then she's back, and then Gina's fired and gone, and they won't have her back?
I think it's as simple as just saying wokeism. I mean, if you're prepared to, like, join the bandwagon of minority views nowadays, you are essentially glorified, so people will protect you. Whereas if you say how you feel and it's actually how most people feel about something, you're then vilified, and all of a sudden you have to be cancelled. And that's just the way that society is working right now. And I think social media plays the biggest role in that, because it's given the voice to minority groups, but those minority groups, for whatever reason, have the most time to spend on social media, and so they're the loudest voices on social media, and that's reported by the news to the mainstream. So all of a sudden, it sounds like minority ideals are actually part of mass opinion, but it's the opposite. And I think society has been duped a little bit by that. I mean, I talk to a lot of people at work. I'm in a retail industry, so you hear a lot of different views, but I can tell you for a fact that for the most part, views haven't really changed that much in the last 20 or 30 years. But the problem is that social media and technology has advanced in such a way that it now gives the small people who feel like they've been unheard for so long, it gives them a much bigger voice and a megaphone in which to amplify their opinion. And so we just have this misconstrued reality now. And social media is a big problem in that. All of the elections that we've seen, whether it's Brexit or whether it's, the American elections, they've all been manipulated by social media. And we've seen numerous documentaries explaining how this works. People are influenced online, and that is ultimately the driver of why we're seeing stupidity come across like this. And I think the whole Whoopi Goldberg thing, she should be fired. If you're going to fire one woman for saying the opposite view, you've got to therefore fire the other person for saying the opposing end of that spectrum. You can't, if you're talking about equality as well, which is the biggest irony in all of this, is that these companies are all saying that they're towing the equality line. Well, where's the equality in that? This lady's been given a 2-week suspension, whereas the other one's been lambasted and basically hung out to dry for everybody just to attack her and essentially try and bully her online just because she has a view that most people actually talk about and share a lot. I think
I know Gina had. I know with Gina it wasn't a one-off comment. I know that there was a few comments here and there.
Yes.
So I think there was a bit of a history of things where Gina was wanting to find her voice, and it was a different narrative to Disney, Lucasfilm, and to Kathleen Kennedy. So I don't think it was a one-off thing. So that's probably, in comparison, it doesn't.
Yeah, but Whoopi Goldberg said a lot of stupid stuff. She's been consistent. She's just the difference is she doesn't necessarily say the same stuff consistently. She has a lot of extreme views, but she tends to switch and jump depending on what is trending at that moment, whatever conversation's trending.
She's trying to stay relevant, I would imagine.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, she's got a talk show, so she's got to talk about relevant subjects. So she's able to jump. Whereas actors, actresses, they're trying to stay relevant when they're not in movies, when they're not actually on screen being seen. And so they have no other opinion other than to choose a side on what they're going to do politically and what they're going to say politically. It's the easiest way to get attention.
Some folks would say, okay, Gina shouldn't have got fired, and nor should Whoopi, like that you should have free speech within tolerance, within a certain boundary, within a certain framework. As long as it's not hate speech, you should be able to freely talk about your opinions and not feel like you're going to be deleted out of existence, kind of thing, because you're going against the social narrative. What do you say to that?
I think that as long as you're not being offensive to people, though, within reason, that makes sense. Because the problem is these days, let's be honest, look at Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Everything these days, everyone's so picky over, that could offend this person, that could offend that person. And years ago, no one was worried about offending people. It was just like a laid-back sort of thing. But yet these days, every issue, because of social media and everything like that, becomes a big issue. So there's always
Peter, the guy, is it Peter Dinklage? I think it is the guy that he was in Game of Thrones as he's really good. He was really good in Game of Thrones, actually. He's spoken against the Snow White film, and now Disney have kind of gone back on themselves. And I think I don't even know if they're going to release that film now. So his opinion, and me and my wife was like, we were watching kind of on TV and you forgot his name now, Stephen Harper. He was on WWE, Hornswoggle, I think it is.
Oh yeah.
He was talking about it, and he was saying, well, this film was going to be a good film because you're going to have dwarf actors who have got jobs, who have got roles in a big Hollywood production, and by criticizing it now, you're robbing those guys of a job. Actually,
but the guy needs to be relevant, so he's gonna share his opinion. That's the problem. They're somehow tarnishing all of the people of one type based on the most famous representative, and that to me is bizarre, because that's like saying if we go to the most well-known white person in the world and then their views count for all white people, like, it's ridiculous. You're not going to accept that. You understand that everybody's different and we all have different views on different things. But that seems to be the way that the world's going now.
Switched over.
Everyone has to be a spokesperson for their stereotype, which is bizarre because we're in this world where everyone's trying to be individualistic, and yet we lean towards these sort of leaders of each stereotype. To me, it's bizarre. We look to the black community to have a black representative. So like Denzel Washington, whatever he thinks, all black people must think. And it's just like, come on, that's not true. But we've done that. I think we do that. We've done that throughout history.
Guys represents all of them.
It's the same as, I mean, to go into Germany, it's the same thing. People look at Hitler and then blamed all of the German people and said that they all believed what Hitler believed. And there's no context to the fact that Hitler was forcing people to believe what he did. Otherwise, he would shoot them and kill them. It was as simple as that. So while there were people who were very evil there were also people who didn't want to be part of the Nazi party, but had to be in it because they feared for their lives, their families' lives. And we can't comment on it because it's history. We're in a completely different time. I have no idea what it would be like to have some dictator threaten to kill my family if I don't follow the political line. So, and if I was in that position, I have no idea what choice I would make, because if it means saving my wife and kids, like, I'm probably going to go with the guy, because I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not the head figure. So I can eventually say that I was forced out and forced to believe certain things and do things. And I would hope that people were good enough and forgiving enough to understand that. But we're not. We look at people like Hitler, and then all of a sudden a whole nation is corrupt and evil. And that's the way of the world. It's why Black Lives Matter is struggling. Like, it's the reason we have these conflicts, because there's a movement that believes that their own race is seen in one way. And it's disgusting that it's like that. We shouldn't live in a world where that happens, where everyone is an individual, which I absolutely believe. And I think that everybody thinks differently. There are evil black people in this world. There are evil white people. There are good white people, and there are good black people. That it doesn't matter about our skin color. What it matters about is our character and who we are morally. And that's really frustrating for me. It's just really frustrating, because you see it.
Your character.
I said I work retail here in America. I'm in Florida. I'm different here. I'm a minority, a white English guy in Miami, Florida.
Speaking the Queen's English, how dare you?
But it's not normal. So I'm treated differently than I ever have been anywhere else that I've lived. And
in a good way or not a good way?
In a bad way.
Really?
It's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible the way that you look at it and you're just like, wow, people are really bitter against, and they blame white people. Like, I feel like almost a spokesperson for white people at times. And this is what I'm saying. I can't speak for a whole race.
Don't get it wrong.
So then do you feel then that an average American person, even though many years gone by, as you said, because people thinking that stereotypes, think of that you as being an English person, this, that, and the other, are going to be like the English stereotypical, like, I don't know, Hugh Grant or whatever that they see in the films, because of the great stereotypical, sort of the key, icons you see based in like films and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think it goes deeper than that, though, because you actually hear a lot of like snide remarks about the way that they all go back to Queen Victorian times, right? Where we had the Commonwealth and we owned everything and we were the ruling the world type deal. So there's a lot of like underhanded comments around that surprised me when I came here. I didn't expect people to even know really about that history, especially that's my stereotype of Americans not knowing much about history and geography outside of the northern American states and countries. But a lot of them only know tidbits, and the one thing they know is that we've got a queen, we've got the monarchy, and that once we ruled the world. And so for those two things, that's what I get stereotyped with the most. Do you know the royal family?
Yeah.
And you're only here to like, you think that English people seem to think they're better than everyone else because of our history. And again, I just don't get it. And I grew up in Birmingham. Like, we're not in a predominantly white city. Not for me anyway, not the area I grew up in. I was around predominantly non-white people at my high school. And there was definitely racism, because, I mean, King's Standing was right on that doorstep. And there are a lot of guys there who are racist. Not everyone, but there are a lot. So we had a lot of mix in our school. Whereas here, it seems to be a much bigger divide. It seems to be like you're either not white or white. And if you're white, you're racist. And it's like there's no in between. Bizarre. And so I even there was a customer who didn't like the way I talked to them, because I asked them not to take a product out of a box because it was a brand new item. I'm like, you can't do that, because if you do that and you drop it and damage it, it's our cost. Like, we're the ones who suffer as a company. We have to pay for that. So we can't let you open new stuff. This customer didn't like that and accused me of being racist. And I'm the only white guy, I think, in the store. There's probably two of us who work there. And so all of my friends are not white. And they all laughed at this guy when he said that, because they know me. And that's the problem with society, is that we just stereotype, and we just like to put somebody as a representative of everything we hate and everything we dislike. And it's ridiculous. But this is what social media has encouraged us to do as a society. It's encouraged us to embrace other people's beliefs of what stereotypes are, instead of encouraging us to get to know people and actually understand an individual and maybe be friends with somebody who doesn't believe the same thing as you, and get to know them and understand that just because they might not believe the same, that they're not necessarily an evil or bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of those issues, and I know we're coming towards the end of of this stream, guys. So there'll be others that are playing this video later. So guys, I hope you enjoy it. Leave a comment on Christian Fandom Geek and the Lord Be With You podcast show, and we'll do this again with the guys as well. But just like, I think people often are really in tune when it comes to these things. And it's like, often, especially as human beings, you think of sort of the laws of logic, you think of reasoning, and one of the things that people struggle with is confirmation bias. We often kind of like people, or like to be around others who share our views, and we find that really easy. So we kind of go into that really easily, and if it's outside of our views or our beliefs or our values, then it's hard work to kind of build that kind of connection or relationship. We like people that are kind of falling into place with our own narrative, I think, and so I think we all probably need to work harder to be able to embrace others of a different opinion, of a different viewpoint, and actually, and in some areas there'll be common ground, and there'll be areas where we have commonalities, and that's fine. And other things will be like, okay, we'll have to just agree to disagree on that, and that's fine. We have to respect each other. As long as they respect and we're treating each other with decency, that's fine. On some things we'll agree, on some things we won't agree, and that's fine, and that's all good, and we don't all have to be the same, but actually there does need to be that respect. And if we've got that, then I think things will be good.
So on a lighter note, we haven't actually spoken about it at all, really. The Mandalorian, before we finish.
Well, let's do, because you guys need to catch up on Mando. Well, Stephen Harper needs to catch up on Mando. Rob, just to say quickly on Mando, I think I've enjoyed Mando. So far I think it's good. I think it's got some issues in the sense of it's relying too heavily on cameo appearances at the moment, and the last two episodes, which are episode 5 and 6, are the best episodes of the show.
That's what I said. Yeah,
and they're the episodes that basically that Boba Fett is not in. So like, it's the Boba Fett TV show.
That's what I said. That the other characters, the cameos, primarily the one obviously from his own series, obviously stole the show in many ways, because they're more interested in his story than really Boba. And it sounds terrible, but I've said that to everyone I've watched it, where I feel like that, you're watching that series now because you're more interested in that person's story than what's going on with Boba. And I think that's the problem with the series right now.
I totally agree with that. And the other thing I'd say as well is, I enjoyed they were moaning about the biker gang. I think in episode 3 that biker gang comes on, and their speeders are really weird. It's like what's going on there? Like, it didn't look right. Didn't look like it should be within that world of Tatooine, because they've got speeders that look like they're coming from the 1960s America, with the weird kind of Power Rangers colors and all that sort of stuff. But I didn't think about that, because I thought, why have they included that? Because it's really bizarre. But what I believe it is, and I could be wrong, but I'm throwing it out there. I believe that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are paying homage to George Lucas, because I think what they're doing is that biker gang with the very bright neon speeders is probably a nod to George Lucas's first film, American Graffiti, which was set in an era where you had those sort of cars that had those neon colors, and very sort of 1960s style sort of cars and things like that. So I think it's a bit of an Easter egg as a nod to George Lucas's first film, American Graffiti. So I think a lot of people have probably missed that, but I think it's that.
I don't know though, because when they go to that one point where he recruits those youngsters to help him, Boba, if you think of it, the area they're in is very sort of, neon lit and all the rest of it. Sort of, is it, more technologically based, rather than say as you said, like a stereotypical Tatooine area. So I don't know. I suppose it's, could you just class it as, they're just trying to sort of show different gangs and sort of different styles? I don't know. I suppose that's just.
I mean, it's almost like I felt it was almost like the sort of 1960s style, a new version of it, and then a bit of cyberpunk as well. So it kind of mixed that together. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. It didn't quite fit in, but I think it's an Easter egg. I think it's a point. I think that it's a homage to George Lucas's first movie, American Graffiti. Anyway, guys at home, hope you enjoyed this stream. It's a bit of an impromptu one together, but it was a lot of fun. Thank you for Stephen Harper and Coolest Rob. Stephen Harper, obviously I know you're on Christian Fan Geek quite often anyway, so there's episodes with Stephen Harper on, so if you've enjoyed seeing him today, get on the episodes where he's always arguing or debating about something. Over-opinionated, as we all know. And Coolest Rob, what's your channel? Let the guys know at home your channel.
I'll be honest, I haven't done much on there for a little while, really. A lot of it is just because I've been sort of changing what projects I've been doing a little bit. So I've gone from trying to do like gaming videos and stuff, primarily based around, what the kids like and stuff like that and so on, to I've started delving into a lot more into 3D printing. So because I've done a lot more around that recently, the last couple of months, I'm trying to start looking at maybe creating some videos around that, such as how it works and sort of how cool it can be. I said it's, I've got like a 1-to-1, which I just need to glue together, 1-to-1 size 4s hammer that's been 3D printed and all sorts. It's, so I've been primarily playing around with that and how sort of cool some of the things are that you can create. So I'm going to try and do some more videos on that, really, because it's, I think sometimes it's cool that some of these things which people think are really stupidly expensive and X, Y, and Z aren't actually that bad at all. For the sake of a couple £100 and maybe less than that, you can literally start doing something, which is a lot more fun than say keep spending money buying stuff when you can physically create it yourself, pretty much by just downloading free files and stuff. So primarily I've just been playing around with sort of 3D printing and stuff like that, and obviously all the cool things you can create and stuff like that for basically not much.
There you go. So guys, there you go. Get on Coolest Rob's channel and have a look at him. He'll soon have a lot of 3D printing as well from Marvel characters. So guys, thanks for being on the stream today. And we'll see you guys very soon again. And guys at home, see you again very soon on the Law Be With You podcast show on Christian Fandom Geek. See ya.